This is the 18th season of Bass Talk Live. With your host, Matt Pangrath. BTL is brought to you by Lowrance, Bass Cat Boats, AFCO, Strike King Lures, Sunline, Big Bite Baits, Spro, X-Zone Lures, Gamakatsu, The Bass Tank, Denali Rods, and Pro Guide Batteries.
PTL, coming at you!
Good morning and welcome to another exciting edition of Bass Talk Live, where we are going to talk about bass fishing. It's an industry show today. Done a couple of these this year now, and have gotten a really good amount of feedback. First one obviously starting with Matt Looney of Pro Guide Batteries, where I asked a bunch of dumb battery questions that I should have known, and then I found out that there were a bunch of people that they didn't know those answers to those questions either, and it went really well. So then we said, well, let's carry it on. Let's use some of the horses in the stable, so to speak. So we went with John Soka of the Bass Tank, and he came on, and that went really well. And then we did Scott Palmer of the Bass Tank, and that went really well. And then we went to who did we do? We did one last week as well. I can't remember who we had on last week. Who did I have on last? I had Johnny Schultz on last week to talk about the deep dive app there in Arkansas is kind of where he grew up. We also have another Arkansasian. I'm not exactly sure what it's called, but it is another sponsor of the show. It's Denali Rods. I've been using Denali Rods for like 3 or 4 years now. But Bryan Head is kind of in charge of the Denali Rods over there. He's been in the industry for like 35 years. I think he's done some stuff with Jewel Jigs, a bunch of other stuff. And I said, Brian, I got to get you on because people are asking, I'll get I'm not one of those guys who's like, well, I've gotten a lot of questions about, and then you go into it. No, you haven't. No one's asked you about that. But I have had some people that have come up and said, well, what's the difference? This Android rod's like $400 or $300, and then like they want to get something. And I'm like, dude, I honestly don't know. I said the guy to talk to would be Bryan Head. And then I said, well, we'll just have Bryan Head on the show for one. So there he is right there. Bryan Head, thanks for being on BTL.
Hey, Matt, glad to be here. Thanks for having me, man.
What exactly do you do at Denali Fishing now?
Well, I'm actually, my title is actually National Sales Manager, but, I sweep floors and unload trucks and pack orders and, send you guys your stuff and just kind of a little bit of everything. But my actual title is National Sales Manager. National
Sales Manager. Now, I am correct in saying that you have been in the fishing industry on a sales and marketing side for the better part of 3 decades, correct?
1992 is when I started.
That's 92, 2002, 2002.
It's right at
over 3 decades. Yeah, right at 30 years. Where did you start out? How'd you get into the game, so to speak, in the early 90s? Because you didn't like see it online and fill out a resume and submit it through the website, did you?
No, exactly not. No. Actually, I was just kind of a regional tournament guy. I lived in Kansas, and we all searched out sponsors for discounts. And I was fortunate enough to meet up with a group called Ludwikowski and Associates. They did Quantum, Zebco, Motor Guide, a bunch of things, and I got on their pro staff, and that's just kind of where it started. I started at the bottom and went from there to distribution sales to sales management, and that's just kind of where I'm at now. I started at the bottom and worked my way up.
What were you doing in 92 before you started? Like, did you leave a full-time career in something else to jump into the fishing industry?
The automobile business.
Really?
Yes.
I didn't know that. And then where in Kansas were you? I say that because anytime I get the opportunity to take a cheap shot at Milford Lake, I do. So when I heard that you were...
quite a ways south of there. I was in Parsons, but yes, Milford's got 2 or 3 fish in it. You just have to find them.
Yeah, that's true. And they all lived on the dam and ate some guy's mag draft for the first day of that tournament. I was there.
But yeah,
Anyway,
I was in the southeast part of the state. We spent most of our time fishing a little lake called Big Hill, and then we were pretty close. We were within like 55 miles of Grand Lake.
oh, so that's close. So yeah, you were right there by
Yeah.
Grand. There's a lot of different states that go to Grand Lake for their TBF and Bass Nation qualifiers now. There's like 3 or 4 states I think that Colorado I've heard of, Kansas, Nebraska. I've heard of a bunch of different states that use that.
Yeah, exactly. And I donated a bunch of money to that Okie division of Redman too.
You fished back when we had Sean Goodwin on the show, and he actually had one of the spittoons, one of the old Red Band spittoons from when he won. That was before the, I believe that was the precursor to the jumping BFL bass, correct?
I think you're absolutely right. I do remember the spittoons. I don't have any of them, but I do remember those. But I've got a jumping bass or two, but no spittoons.
That's cool. So then you got in the industry in '92, or just set the table a little bit, and kind of what was your career path then to end up with Denali, and how long have you been with them?
Well, I got into distribution sales, which I really enjoyed, and that's, for a better word, just calling on dealers and filling their stores with products.
Okay.
And then I was, I've been fortunate enough to work for some good companies. I was friends with Gail at Jewel Bay Company, and I ended up there after I got out of the distribution sales. And then I ran Bass Cat Boats at one time, and met Scott through that, and used to call on him, and just a friendship developed into switching positions to be with Denali.
Nice. And then Scott is the owner of Denali.
Scott is the owner of Denali, yes.
Okay. And I have been to, I wouldn't call it a warehouse. I'd call it more the headquarters of Denali Fishing is in Arkansas. I mean, it's not like a massive, like, trillion square foot, but it's a really impressive space. And how long have you guys been there? And then that's in what town?
It's in Mountain Home, and we moved into the new building about 4 years ago. And yeah, we do a lot of shipping out of just an average size facility.
So you guys are at the capital of the bass boat building world.
We're right in the middle of that big mess.
It always cracks me up. I meant to ask Rick about this, because I know Rick Pierce would know why. How, like, the hilliest part of Arkansas that gets like a lot of snow and ice ended up being like the capital of the bass boat building world.
Isn't that crazy? They've got every fiberglass boat built either there or Tennessee, I guess.
You see a lot of boats around just on your everyday, like, drive around, and there are bass boats everywhere. Because I only get to see it when I go, when I'm going to Bass Cat or to Denali or.
Yeah, they're everywhere. I mean, you see all the different brands everywhere. I mean, you see them on semi trailers, you see them behind vehicles, and of course we live by Norfolk and Bull Shoals Lakes, right in between them. So you see people going and coming and going every day.
Yeah. So I kind of set it up before I got you on, and there's no other way to put it. It's like dumb sponsor question day is the way I put it. And I put it for me because I've been full-time in the industry for like almost 15 years now. And I'm not too proud to admit there are certain things that I should know by now, being in the industry, that I don't. One of them obviously was batteries. Knew nothing about batteries. I'm fairly proficient at that now, I feel. Everything but there's one way to learn, and that's to ask questions.
Sure.
And I feel like in the rod market, and you're talking about Denali rods, there's all sorts of numbers, letters, actions, and everything that, like, I know what I like to use, I know what I like to recommend, but I don't actually know, like, what it means. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does make sense, and we all use the same kind of a lingo, Matt. A lot of guys will come up to you and say, "Hey, I've got a 7-foot medium action rod that I don't understand why I can't do this with." Well, technically, you've got a 7-foot rod, and the medium is actually the action of the rod. The medium heavy is actually the power of the rod rather than the action of the rod. So when people say they've got a medium heavy action rod, they've technically got a medium heavy power rod, and the tip can be anywhere from moderate, which is slow, moderate fast, which speeds it up, fast, extra fast. So that's a big thing to understand, is the actual action of the rod is the taper of it rather than the power of it, if that makes any sense.
Okay, we're gonna start. We're gonna start at the beginning, and we're gonna walk through each one of these. This is like the. I want to walk through the action and the power, and then I want to walk through the guides. I want to walk through how you rate a rod on what it is. So you're the one who got that. Who got that started with the action. So we'll start there again. So real quick, run through again. What is the difference between action and power?
Okay, the power of a rod is actually where the rod will actually load up. Most of them, you'll see 20% of the rod. When you grab the tip of a rod and you pull it down in this direction, and I'm in my house,
like a rainbow.
Yeah, so you pull it. So the higher the power, medium will be real parabolic. Medium heavy will bend at, let's just say, 20%. Heavy will bend at 15%. Extra heavy is going to bend at 10%. But the higher the power, the less bend the rod is actually going to have. The more it loads up and the more working strength you have.
Okay, so a heavy or the power. So all these are fast. Like I'm looking at that. If it all says the power underneath it is fast.
No, that's the power of it's medium heavy,
okay.
heavy,
medium heavy. Okay, and then the action is fast.
Yeah, the action can be moderate, slow, moderate, fast, and that is basically how quick the rod comes back to top dead center. If in layman's terms, when you pull it, when you flex it, it let go of it. That's how fast it comes back to where it needs to be.
Okay, so who determines this? Like, how is this determined across the board? There's how many? Do you have any idea in your line? How many would you say? I would say competitors, but comparable rods are there to Denali, like on the market? Are there hundreds? Are there dozens? Are there thousands?
There's hundreds of rod companies, and there's a bunch of good ones out there, Matt. And we definitely don't talk bad about anybody's products. There's a bunch of good ones out there, and it all boils down to how you take care of your people and how precise you get your rods to the actions that they like.
So is there like a website that all these rod builders and companies go to like what do you have, like a summit to decide what's considered heavy, what's considered medium heavy, what's considered fast? How does that become
really.
normalized?
There's just kind of been a standard over the years. Way back before my time, there's just kind of been a standard. This is what everybody kind of considers a heavy. Now, everybody in the industry's heavy is not the same. Our heavy action rod may be a little bit less than somebody else's heavy action rod, but there's not a great, I guess for better words, there's not really an line by line item you have to go by. I mean, it's just kind of what yourself or a Michael Neal or a Jeff Creed, it's just kind of what you like in a heavy action rod and a tip. It's just all what you like. Okay. But there's a basic standard, but it's not really a chiseled in stone.
Okay, so your actions, I've never really seen in bass fishing anything. Is there anything in the or the power of the rod? You don't really see many light powers, do you?
No, you don't see that. The only time you see that is like in pan fishing or crappie fishing. We do have some ultralights in our Prime series, the little crappie rods.
Okay.
But you just want something really, really parabolic that bends real easy and is real slow to react. Because how this crappie fishing, they call them paper mouths for a reason. You just don't want to, jerk too hard and rip it out of their mouth. You want that rod to bend a little bit. Okay, I guess there is one medium light, but your powers are going to be medium for the most part in bass fishing. Medium heavy, extra heavy, and extra heavy. Are those basically your five powers that you're going to look for? Yes, that's the basic ones that we use. Yes. Okay, and then your extra heavies and your extra heavies, those are either like big baits, heavy punching, flipping, stuff like that. Typically rods that are over 7'4". Yeah, stuff you're going to throw an A-rig on, or you're going to throw, flip and punch down in Florida. Okay, and then your medium heavies and your extra heavies are going to be your moving baits, like spinner baits, like a chatterbait, Texas rig. I
God
worm and
forbid
jig,
you have to
stuff
tie
like
on a Carolina rig should you just decide to hate yourself for the day, but that type of stuff.
Hey, Mark would be
Jigs.
proud you brought that up.
I know it would. All right, so that's the power, and then you also kind of went through the action then, and I just want to kind of get like a base down of what these rods are before we then go into some other questions that I have that are suited. So then your actions go anywhere from, what is it, moderate to extra fast?
You can get them at slow. You can actually get one that's slow. That's when you're starting to get into glass rods, but you can go from slow to moderate, which is going to be your crankbait type stuff. You can get into, fast and extra fast fast for, some of the walleye fishing rods we sell and stuff. But yes.
Okay.
But
so
slow
then,
basically through extra fast is going to be the main course.
And describe again what it, okay, like if you were to describe a moderate action rod, what are the characteristics of that?
When you think of a moderate action rod, you think of a crankbait rod because it's going to have the big bow. The moderate action rod is going to bow way down in the rod towards the handle. And
so the bend is going to start deeper in the rod. It's when you load up on that fish, you notice that rod is not just bending at the tip, it's bending around the first or even below the first eye in some cases.
Yes, and that's to keep from pulling it away from the fish. And also when you're casting a crankbait a long ways, and I'm sure we'll get into it, but a moderate action rod to, you're going to get into, basically it takes the whole rod to load up to throw that bait. So you want to throw it a long ways, and it's just kind of like arcing the rod. But yes, but the taper is, some people call it the taper, the action. It's all one and the same. It's how quick the rod bends.
Okay, so then a moderate fast would then bend more towards the middle of the rod, providing more stability on the bottom half. Is that not a technical term? You can't say bottom had the butt towards more stability towards the butt.
Yeah.
Okay.
But the faster the rod gets, the more out towards the end, it starts the flex, stop.
And then the same with the fast. So then like an extra fast, you would have, the tip would be very, gosh, I'm sounding like a rookie here. Bendy? The tip
an extra fast, the tip would be more rigid. We've got some walleye jigging rods that are like 5'9", 5'6", that are medium action rods, but they've got an extra fast tip, and they feel like boards, but they're actually not.
Because it's the very tip of the rod that's doing the bending, not it's stiff all the way up through, but then the very tip. So it looks like a candy cane almost.
Yes,
would be an extra
the very
fast.
tip of the rod is the very tip of the rod. The faster the rod, the less bend out towards the end. Yes.
Mm-hmm. So, in my opinion, the benefit of a fast action or an extra fast action is you can take lighter baits. Like I throw a wacky worm a lot, and I like a fast action rod. The rod I like, I think, is a moderate fast. It feels like a moderate fast too, but I like a fast action because you can load up a lighter bait because you have a lot of movement towards the front, but you still have a lot of backbone in that rod. Then
exactly, yeah. You don't want to get it too fast because then you can't get it to load up. When you get into really fast rods, you're getting into flipping sticks, or you're getting into vertical jigging rods. But yeah, as you're saying, when you're wanting to sling a wacky worm under a dock, or you want to skip a jig or something, most want a fast action rod because when they rear back and they get it to load, they want it to sling that bait forward really quick and stay low to the ground. Okay. So it kind of gives it that shooting it out of a gun effect.
All right, so that's your action and your power.
Mm-hmm.
We'll go through one more of these, and then we'll take our first break of the day, and then we'll get back and we'll get into like the nitty gritty of it. Lengthwise, you've been in this game a long time, and I know from even when I started fishing, I mean, like I remember there was a guy in the club who used 7-foot rods, and we were like, that guy is swinging some serious wood around. And that was in like the 90s and 2000s. And, guys, oh, yeah, it's always overkill. Wally's he's always wanting to set the hook hard on him. Well, now, like, man, I feel like you'd be hard-pressed to find in some pros' boats, some anglers' boats, any rod less than 7 foot.
That's exactly right, Matt. About the only time you see it is, maybe some topwater, jerkbait and topwater rods. That's about the only time you see anything less than 7 feet. Yeah, when I started out, it was 5'6" pistol grips, medium action. You'd rear back with a half-ounce spinner bait. You'd have to wait 10, 12 minutes for the rod to load back up so you could throw it.
What do you think changed that? What do you think made the arms race to wear longer and longer rods?
I think what changed a lot of it is guys started, back in the day, everybody just fished the bank. They just beat the bank. They didn't, locators weren't a thing. I think guys getting offshore, fishing in timber, bigger line. I just think there's just a lot of things like that, fishing, like I said, fishing standing timber with a 6'6" rod or a 5'6" rod. Gosh, if you're in 20 foot of water and set the hook with an 11-inch worm, you're probably not getting him out of there. And I just think that's where it came into effect. It was hard for me to switch. I thought, I'm like you. I seen a 7-foot rod and I thought, golly, that guy's saltwater fishing.
I remember I had it. I bought a. It was actually a Larry. It was a Larry Nixon tournament series. The Abu Garcia with the round reel. It had an engraved jumping bass on the side, and if you registered it, you could win like $400. Well, I'm assuming the Assumption Bass Club 15 boat tournament didn't count for it, but it was a 7-foot rod. And I bought it to throw my jig on so I could just really pour the coals to them when I was like 16. But it was that rod. I still have that reel. It was a big, giant round reel. It was even bigger than like the 5600.
Another thing that's crazy is and I'm sure you're aware of this. I mean, with boats back then, they couldn't store anything over a 6'6". I mean, they couldn't even store a rod that was 7 feet long.
Yeah, that's a great point.
A lot of the first rods that came out over 7 foot, I remember Quantum came out with a Carolina rig rod, and I believe it was 7 foot, and it was telescopic, so you could store it.
I know that Falcon had one that was like it was just a normal. I think they had a 7.4 or 7.6 rod that was telescoping too. I remember I had one of those things.
Yeah.
And now that's the standard. You can fit 8-foot rods in, and FLW never really had the length rule. I didn't realize that, but you would see guys out at Beaver Lake like fly fishing as co-anglers, and Bass had, I believe, an 8-foot rule for a number of years. And I think, correct me if I'm wrong here, Brian. We'll go a little history lesson. That was to prevent the boondoggling or bondoogling or whatever it was called, where they would tie the line to the 10-foot pole with the either the spinnerbait or the buzz bait and go back and forth in the holes. Like where there were some guys who won the tournaments on it and it was like too dominant, so the guys who didn't do it were like, yeah, no, 8 foot max. You can't be doing that anymore. Is that how you kind of remember where it came from?
I do remember something about that. I don't remember exact, but I think you're right on track. I'm pretty sure that's exactly what it was. You could put the bait in there and never had to move it. It never had to retrieve it. You could just move it back and forth. I think that's correct.
And then they took it away, I remember. And remember when they took that away like 5 or 6 years ago, everyone came out with like a 10-foot launcher, like a cranking rod, 9.5 foot. And those never really seemed to catch on.
We never did. We never did really get into that. And I mean, I understand the theory behind it, but golly, can you imagine your boat's, I think yours is 20 foot long. Can you imagine being in the back of the boat with a guy with a 9-foot rod? You better be watching.
Oh, I never even thought of that. I was talking about storage too and making it 2 or 3 piece. But yeah, you would just ruin your co-angler's day about twice a day. He would just have like a crankbait right in his dome.
Yeah. We never did venture down that path. And we never did get a lot of requests for it. Of course, when it first came out, we had some people ask for 8-footers, and I know some of those guys, pitch and flip with 8-footers down there in Florida, and I get it. But we've always just felt like the 710, 711 was adequate, and most of our pros have kind of agreed. We never had any of them ask for them.
All right. Well, we got through the power and the action. Now, when we come back, I want to talk about the graphite. I remember it was big deal. Oh, this is an IM6 graphite. This is IM8 graphite. This is how it's woven or around it. Always was like bragging about that growing up on the rods that I have, but I have no idea what it means. What is the material of the rod that lends to it to its sensitivity, to its durability, to its price? So we're talking with Bryan Head of Denali Fishing on BTL. We'll be back after these messages.
Bigger and better. The Lowrance Ultimate Fishing System upgrade now offers more. A new $200 rebate on active target live sonar and bigger savings with up to $1,200 cash back. Pick fish finding tools to fit the way you fish. From high-performance sonar and ultra-quiet ghost trolling motor to navigation and networking tools that bring it all together. Find more, see more, catch more.
The new Puma STS has been redesigned from the ground up. With the angler, design, function, and performance in mind, nothing on this new offering was compromised, and the only thing carried over from the previous version is the name. Based on the Soft Touch series hull that started with the flagship Jaguar, this new model is nimble and performs incredibly well at all speeds with either a 250 or 300 horsepower engine. Featuring a new 96-inch wide-body footprint, this hull measures out at 20 foot 7 inches in length. Industry-leading design coupled with tournament-winning performance. The Puma STS from Basscat. Feel the rush.
I've made my living on the water for over 20 years.
For 14 years.
For over 23 years.
I've worn a bunch of different clothing brands over the years.
Some companies big.
And some companies small.
All of them said they were making clothing for us.
But none of them knew us.
None of them were us. Except for one.
Except for one.
Except one.
AFCO.
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 Fishing isn't part of us. It is us.
The KVD 100 jerkbait. 15 different colors. A perfect combination of roll, wiggle, and flash. Increased castability. 3D eyes. Premium black nickel hooks. KVD. Tie one on. Striking lures.
Are you looking to install your own fishing electronics? Well, the Bass Tank is here to help you. The solution is the Bass Tank Power Harness. It takes the guesswork out of installation. No more voltage issues or interference. Designed by an engineer so that you can get professional results right there in your own garage. Installation done right with the help of the Bass Tank Power Harness. You can feel confident knowing that your installation was done right. The Bass Tank Power Harness. Give us a call or order yours today at thebasstank.com.
Best patterns backed by tournament data. Start by finding the best 10% of your lake. Know exactly what to look for and what to throw. After that, just put them in the boat. Try the Deep Dive app today.
Look at that beast right there.
Elite Series Pro Daryl Gleason here. My Pro Guide batteries keep me going on those long tournament days and long practice days. Always plenty of juice, never fail. The best part about Pro Guide batteries, it's the people behind the company. They have over 40 years experience in the battery business, keeping all of us fishermen out on the water longer, catching more fish. Check them out at ProGuideBatteries.com.
What's up, Bass Talk Live fans? Brandon Polnick here. And ever since I won a couple Bassmaster Elite Series events on X-Zone Lures, I've been getting a bunch of questions of what makes them so special and different. And really, the truth is, it's in the details. The little details, things like no cheap fillers in their plastic. That gives you more lifelike action, more realistic and vibrant colors. But don't just take my word for it. Go to www.xzonelures.com and check them out for yourself.
Welcome back to an educational edition of BTL, Bass Talk Live, talking with longtime industry veteran Bryan Head, who is now in charge of Denali Fishing. It was Denali Rods a couple years ago, if I'm correct here, Bryan, and now it's Denali Fishing because you guys have tungsten and some other stuff coming down the pipeline, clothing. It's more than just rods over at Denali these days.
Yeah, we're expanding out, and you're exactly right. We've got tungsten, we've got clothing coming. We've got a few other things that's coming down the pipe that are in the testing phases right now.
For the break, I kind of talked about how I wanted to get into the makeup. Let's see if I can use these terms. So the blank is what the entire rod is built around, right? Let's just get that down.
Exactly.
So the whole rod is built off of the blank.
Exactly. Correct.
And that
Correct.
that blank. So when you get that rod, does it come with a taper in it? Like, is it just the blank is, let's say we're dealing with a 7-foot rod. That rod,
Yeah,
the blank is one piece.
Yeah, we actually develop. We have our own what's called mandrels, and all rod companies have mandrels. And all it is a metal, for a better word, metal bar that's the shape of the rod you want.
Okay.
And if you want a 7.2, you can cut it. You can shorten it and lengthen it. But we actually have mandrels that the rods are actually rolled on. But yes, when we get the rods, it's done. It's the guides are on it. Everything's done when we get it.
But the blank then is made out of, and would you say the majority of the rods now are just straight graphite?
Most of them are a blend of graphite and fiberglass.
Okay.
But yes, there are a lot. Graphite is 90% of what they're made of. Yes.
Okay, so what is the IM? I've known this. I've never ever been able to get an answer on this, Brian. So like IM6, IM8. What is that? It seems like the higher it gets, the more it gets, but people throw that number around, and I have no idea what it means.
And all that is the modules of the rod. That's the modulus of the rod, the fibers that's in there inside of the rod, inside of the graphite. IM6, IM7, IM8, IM9. Again, that's just another standard that the industry kind of started following. Doesn't really mean the same for everybody. Our IM8 may be different than another brand's IM8, but yes, it's kind of one of those patterns that we all follow. And yes, it is what everybody uses to differentiate a rod. But correct, the lower the number, the lower the quality of the graphite, the less modules. The higher the number, the higher number of modules, and the more sensitive the rod and the more crisp.
But like is graphite a woven material that is flexible?
Yes, it looks like carpet when they roll before they roll it.
Really?
It actually looked like a big roll of carpet. Yeah, they they got the mandrels like I told you, which I've got a rod laying here, but the mandrel looks just like this, except for it's a piece of metal, and then they roll the mats of graphite or glass, fiberglass, onto the mandrel to create the shape of the rod.
Okay, so then the number 6 and 8 and all that I'm still confused as to what. So there's 8 strands or 6 strands or.
Yeah, let's just say an IM6 is, and I'm just going to throw some numbers out there. These are not technical. Let's just say an IM6 is 28 million modules, and that's just all that is the fibers that's woven inside of there, the little strand. Okay. There's that many of them in there. So, you go, let's say an IM7 is 28 and an IM8 is 30 and an IM9 is 4. That's just how it works. It's just the higher the number.
So is it denser then?
Modules. Yeah, they're smaller. The higher the grade is, the smaller the modules are, but the more power, but the more strength they are. And if that makes any sense.
Yeah. So does
they
that
get more rigid?
Does that translate sensitivity then?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. The higher the modules, an IM6 rod is not gonna be nowhere near as sensitive as an IM, let's say 10.
Okay, but then I've also experienced the higher module. So it seems to me like a higher end rod is more susceptible. I know rod people don't like to talk about this, to exploding. 100%. We've all had that rod where, like let's take like a ugly stick, for example. Like that thing is, if it breaks, it doesn't ever pop, but the high end rods seem to explode on hook sets when they do break. Is that because it's thinner? There's because it's a higher density, higher strength, there's less material there. So not taking care of your rod then has more catastrophic results because you have less wiggle room. Does that make sense?
100% correct. Yes, exactly what you're saying. The higher the modules, the higher that density is, and it for a better word, when you get that rod outside of its comfort zone, it makes it more susceptible to snapping. Yes, and it's a real quick, clean break.
Because I've always heard that across the board. Oh, I paid $300 for this rod, and then it snapped. and be like, well, yeah, dude, you've like had it on your bike and you keep it on your gravel when you're not using it. Like, little stuff like that gets nicks in it. So, okay. So
100%.
that makes sense on that. So then graphite's a natural material, right? Like they mine graphite. Like what is it considered, a metal or a rock or?
Now that you're probably getting outside of my know-how. I'm not positive on that. But yes, it is a naturally formed material. But I don't know. That's a good question. I don't know that answer.
I'm looking this up 1 second.
I do not know that. And you got one that I don't know.
Referred to as a plumbago, Plumbago, is a crystalline form of the element carbon with its atoms arranged in a hexagonal structure. It occurs naturally in this form.
So it's basically, and I knew it was a form of carbon, but I didn't know. I'm not an expert.
Under high pressures and temperatures, it converts to diamond.
We need to pile these rods. We need to pile these rods in the yard.
It also this is the Wikipedia. It is a excellent conductor of electricity and heat. That is why we had Jason Christie on last week, and he's talking about how he no longer fishes in the lightning. He doesn't do dumb stuff anymore. And is highly conductive and makes useful electronics, batteries, and solar panels. All right. So there's the IM8 on that. So the other thing that I wanted to get into then was handles. Seems to be the age-old question. I know at Denali you guys do a lot of different handles. You've done foam, cork, multiple kind of rubbery different materials. So kind of walk through the basics of the handles, because that seems to be both very personalized per angler, but there also seems to be trends in the industry, I seem, as far as full handles, split grips, cork, foam, all sorts of different stuff. So how much does the handle affect the rod?
To start off with, Matt, you're right. There is a lot of different trends in the handle market. Of course, we all started out with the EVA foam and then cork, and a lot of guys still like nothing but cork. There's also the wind type grips, polymer grips that are out there. And right now the trend seems to be the polymer grips. In my opinion, they're definitely great to hang on to and definitely great to hold on to and feel real comfortable. I think you can lose some sensitivity because there's, it's basically rubber. So rubber's going to, try to, slow vibration down, but it is the trend. We've also got some of our rods, and I'm going to hold this up here and see if you can see it. This is our Prime Series rods, and some of our walleye rods, they have no grip whatsoever on them. It's just basically the reel seat.
Okay.
So that's kind of the new wave thing that's coming. We're seeing, and that's basically for spinning rods. We're seeing a lot of that with spinning rods.
Hold that up again one more time.
Okay.
Okay, so yeah, there's no cork or no foam above it at all, and the theory there is more skin contact on blank.
Exactly right. And there's no need for it on a spinning rod.
Okay.
Yeah, that's what. And I've got a polymer grip here, which most people are familiar with that. That's your basic wind type, polymer type grip. And those are real popular right now. I kind of like them myself. I know you're kind of a cork guy. And I like cork too. It's just that cork's getting tougher and tougher and tougher to get, and that's why people are looking for other sources. And there is actually a synthetic cork out there as well that's man-made.
Really? That's one of the reasons why cork, especially, wood's really expensive right now. Everything's hard to get right now. You could probably do an entire show on trying to run a company with products that are not where they need to be when they need to be there. But
exactly right.
But cork is difficult to obtain.
Yeah, and it's just getting less and less and less. I mean, it's just getting more tough, and it gets expensive, and that's why you see most people when they do rod companies, when they do build a cork handle rod or cork grip rod, a lot of times you'll see cork at where your hand is, and at the bottom you may see EVA foam, or rarely do you see a full cork handle, which we do have this year. in some of our lithium lineups. And I don't know if you've got any of them or not, but we do have a full cork handling some of our 7/6 cranking rod and some of our flipping sticks and stuff.
I have one that's a prototype. I probably shouldn't have said that. Now I'm going to probably have to give it back to you. But I have a full.
You're all right.
I have a full cork handle in my favorite rod.
That's right. That's the one I brought up there to Table Rock, wasn't it?
Yeah, I like it. But I also like the split grip. And when it comes to cork, are there? This is reminding me of the Saturday Night Live skit. So sorry. When it comes to cork, are there different qualities? Like, do you guys have to? Does a rod company have to go find a distributor for that type of wood, or is there just a standard?
No, and it's basically it basically all comes from one place. And you hear back in the day, back when I was kind of in the industry, they advertise, and you can probably look for some old ads. You see Portuguese cork handles. Well, sure, that's where cork comes from, Portuguese. But okay. It's basically, there is better qualities of it, and you really pay for it. But for the most part, you kind of get what you get. And we've been really fortunate that our supplier that we get our stuff through we've got a really good supplies of it. And you'll see some cork that chips and cracks and big chunks come out of it. But for the most part, it's pretty standard. It's pretty standard stuff.
What's the best way to take care of that? Is there a maintenance that you recommend for cork handled rods?
You can. What I do with mine is Matt, is I take mine and I usually just dish soap, like Dawn dish soap and a rag, and scrub all that oil and stuff, because your hands leave all that oil in there and people don't realize it gets into those pores, and you can scrub that off of there. If you get a chip in your cork handle, or you get a big chunk out of it, you can actually just go to Walmart or your local hardware store and you can buy actually wood filler and fill that in and sand it down, and then just fill it in like you would a piece of wood.
Interesting. I'm looking at it here. It says, Portugal, Algeria, Spain, Morocco, France, Italy, and Tunisia. And it takes them 40 years before they're ready to be harvested, but they can live to be up to 500.
Yep.
Denali should come out with the 500-year-old cork-handled triple diamond.
Charge $19.99 for it. $1,999, that is.
Yeah.
But yeah, all that cork is from over there, and like I said, it's the supply and demand is getting difficult. Like I said, they used to advertise the Portuguese cork, but that's, as you can see, you see it all comes from that area of the country or the world.
It says cork is actually made of water-resistant cells that separate the outer bark from the delicate interior bark. It is a unique property not found in any other naturally existing material.
Yeah, and that's why you see it. That's why you see a lot of. You don't see it as much anymore, just because of the expense of it. But a lot of housing, when they used to lay these floors and stuff, these floors, that's why they used that cork backing, because it was water resistant.
Oh, I did not realize that. All right, so the split versus the full, that's just a trend, or is that a weight thing?
That's 100% a trend. It does affect the weight a little bit, Matt, but it's mainly a trend. It's just kind of where it's at right now. And again, you just got to it's a new look. It's a new trend. It's a little bit of a weight, but not as much weight as it is a trend. Correct.
Okay. I've also always wondered how you determine, it'll say this lure is recommended for 1/4 through 3/4 ounces, or you could use it on that as well as the line weight for it. How is that stuff determined?
And that's all determined on a combination of the power of the rod and the taper of the rod. So, I mean, like right here in front of me is a 7'2" medium heavy covert. It says 12 to 17 pound line, and it's a 3/8 to 1 ounce. That's determined because it's a medium heavy action rod. It's got a fast tip, so it'll handle all of those baits, basically, is what it's saying. If you put a 1/8 ounce weight on this, it's going to be, or 1/16 ounce weight, it's going to be difficult to throw.
Because it's not going to load.
Yes. We feel like that on this one, between 3/8 and 1 ounce is where the rod is going to load the best. And again, everybody's different, but this is where we feel the rod's going to load the best. 1 ounce may be pushing the upper limits of it, but it'll handle it.
Okay, this is a perfect example because you could see that when you hold it up. All right, it says KW723WJ. I know that that's big for every rod company. You get these guys on the pros and they're like, oh, I was throwing the X4 39862. Oh no. And then I switched to the 4.5 and I'm like, really? Let's go, people. So let's explain the numbers and letters, because really, instead of having to say all that, if you know what each one stands for in that is that called a SKU, or in that system?
Just a model number.
In the model number, basically your model number is going to tell you everything you need to know about the rod.
It'll tell you everything you need to know.
All right.
KW is we'll just start there if that's what you want me to do. Go through that.
Go through the entire thing.
Okay, the KW it's a covert series. That's what the KW means. The 723 means it is a 7 foot 2 inch 3-power rod. A 3-power means a medium heavy. In our system, a 1 is a light, a 2 is a medium, a 3 is a medium heavy, a 4 is a heavy, a 5 is an extra heavy, and so on. So it is a 7 foot 2, 3-power, and this one is called a worm and jig rod. And I can just tell you that it has a fast tip because it's a worm and jig rod. But we call it this is called a technique specific worm and jig.
Okay.
So anybody, but on all of our rods, it's the first 2 numbers are the length of it. Now let me really confuse you for a second, Matt. Before the last year or two, we did not do that. We measured our rods by inches. So I've got one sitting here beside me. We used to have a rod in the lithium series, and I think you've got some of them. It was called an L905FX. That was a 7 foot 6 inch flipping stick. So the 905, the 90 means the rod was 90 inches. And it was a 5-power. Now that's some of the other companies.
Oh, there's still like Dobbin still does that, don't they? I think. Yes, because I remember all there's a whole group, and they're like, well, I was throwing the 905.
Yeah, and that's exactly what it is. That just means it's a 90 inch 5-power rod, which means it's a 7 foot 6 flipping stick.
Okay. So can I give you a rod here? I'm going to pick a rod. I'm on the Denali website right now. I'm going to pick a rod. I'm going to see if you can tell me what it is based off of the model number.
Okay.
All right. ADC 703WJ. First letters are ADC. What does that mean to you?
That is an Android casting rod.
AD is Android. Casting is, or C is casting. 70
is 7 foot.
7 foot 0 inches, and then
the 3 is the power.
WJ.
And then it's a worm and jig rod. It's a technique specific. If we weren't using the technique specific system, it would just be an F. It's a 703F.
All right. So this is a good way, especially when you're looking at rods. Once you understand the system for the company and you want to make sure you're dealing with the right one, you can look at that model number and really tell what you're dealing with. If you're wanting to buy a used rod or something like that, if let's say you see a rod for sale, let's say you want to buy one, and say, hey, shoot me that model number. You can tell everything you need to know based on the model number, instead of a guy going, well, I think it's a medium action and it looks, just tell me the model number and I can tell what I'm dealing with off of that.
And that last number is the power of the rod, and that's the main thing they're going to want. Just like this specific rod here, before we changed it to a 723, it was called a K863WJ, which just means it was 86 inches and it was a 3-power. So some of our older rods still have the older numbers on them, but if you see a rod, any brand that, and I say this pretty sure I'm correct, any brands, whether it's like you were talking about Dobbins or some of them, if it says 90 or if it says 86 or whatever, that's inches, because they're probably not going to have a 9-foot rod out there unless you're fly fishing.
All right. Would be remiss if we did not go over guides. I always heard the rule is, hey, more guides it's got, better rod it is. Is that always the truth, or is it based on what type of guides it is?
It's not always the truth. I think you can get too many guides. The main thing you need with guides is, Matt, is at one time on our covert series, we had 14 guides and a tip. To me, that was a little bit overkill, but that's what our people wanted. The guide is basically, as you well know, is nothing more than to keep the rod, the line inside the incoherent with the rod, and then to keep the line off of the blank. Now a lot of people claim the more guides you got, the less line slap you have on the blank, the less the rod touches or the line touches the blank. But I also think you can get too many and create just as much friction with the line dragging on the guides. That's just my opinion. Everybody's got one, and everybody may be different.
I gotcha. So like the new Android series is touting the Royal Titanium guides. I caught a couple fish on it, by the way, this past week, and they are awesome. They're very shiny in the sun. They catch the sunlight sometimes, and you're like, whoa, it's like a saber, like a lightsaber, because they're silver. They like reflect the light.
They are pretty cool looking, though, ain't they?
I know we've had Bernie Schultz on before. I think he might even be sponsored by like Fuji guides, and then there's like different kind of shapes and types. So like, run through what you're looking for in guides and why like the Android has the Royal Titaniums and some might not.
And the reason we have the Royal Titaniums on the Android to start off there is of course, titanium's lighter, and we wanted that rod as light as we could get it.
Okay.
Titanium is extremely durable, and of course, it's got the titanium guides all the way through. The smallest one on there, like on our casting rods, is a number 5, so we could cut down on the number of guides and still accomplish the same thing with the same lightness, the same theory of keeping the line up. But the main reason they're titanium is for durability and lightness.
So those do not have. Are there inserts on that rod, or
yes.
Is it okay?
Yes, there's ceramic inserts in them. Yes.
Okay, so some rods have inserts, some rods don't too. Like I've seen some that don't, and some that have ceramic inserts.
Yeah, and the majority of your higher end bass rods do have ceramic inserts, and that's just basically it's just another way to protect your line. The ceramic, deals with heat real well, and we probably don't realize how much heat when you're cranking that line in on that rod with the bait on there, with the fish on there. There's a lot of heat being generated through that line, and a lot of people don't even think about that. But there's a lot of heat for such a small diameter of line, and that ceramic kind of helps dissipate that.
So I always wondered what the ceramic was. I didn't realize it's like a clay. It's like the same type of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Not the same, but it's pretty much the same type of stuff, like pottery type of stuff. Ceramics. Like ceramic pottery.
It's the same thing. Yeah, it's basically a glass. It's a clay glass, basically, if you want to call it that. That's polished up to a real smooth finish. And as you know, occasionally they can chip and eat your line up, but again, that's just a line protector and a heat dissipator.
So is this what makes people kind of loyal to different rod companies, or like one specific company? They find a company, they like the guide, their ceramic guides that company uses. They like how that company does their powers, their actions, their core candles, and it all comes together. I mean, that's where all the rods are very similar but different, is in the details, right?
I think that's 100% correct. And, to me, one of the most important things, and right on track with what you're saying, yes, I think they like the look of your rods. They like the feel of them. They like you said, they like the power. They like the guides you use. And also just the way you take care of them. Because warranty on rods is an absolute nightmare. And I think the better you take care of your people, the more loyal customers you get. But yes, to get on track to get them there, I think first of all, it's eye appeal. And then they start asking some of the questions. But some of the questions are sound simple, but they're actually technical.
Yeah. One more kind of thing, and then you mentioned it. We're going to go there after the next break. I want to hear some of your best warranty stories. But
oh, Lord. That could get interesting.
But I do want to talk about the Android. So the 36T here. I'm going to play the ad, because this ad cracks me up every time. I've talked about it on the show. It's Michael Neal, about as excited as I've ever heard Michael Neal. So I'm going to play the commercial, and then I want to run through some of this stuff just to see what it means.
The new Android series is the peak of the Denali lineup and offers the ultimate Denali experience. The Android series features 36-ton multi-directional graphite combined with interlock blank technology for added strength. Each rod is outfitted with Royal Titanium guides that will not fail. The blank is fitted into an easy-touch, soft-feel EVA foam grip with exposed blank reel seat. This all allows the Android to transmit every movement of your bait and even the most subtle bites. The Android series is the finest rod Denali has ever made and offers an angler the ultimate fishing experience with a limited lifetime warranty. See the full lineup of Android rods at DenaliRods.com.
All right, so that kind of went through it. We kind of know what a lot of that means now. I still am not sure what 36T multi-directional graphite is. Is that just higher than an IM8?
Yes, it's basically, again, 36 ton is the 36 million modules. I mean, that's just weight. It's just measured by ton per square inch ton. Multi-directional.
I get it. So you said like IM6 might be like 26 or
yes,
28. So this is showing the 36 ton is saying, hey, this is how much tighter the weave is on this graphite than another graphite.
Yeah, the more modulus there are in it, the smaller the modulus, the tighter the weave, the crisper the rod. That's all that is saying. It's you can call it tonnage, you can call it modulus. It's all what they're saying. It's just the working power of the rod, like we were talking about earlier.
And then is multi-directional going to increase the durability of that rod because they're not all in one way? I would assume it would be like if you try to break something and all the grain is going one way, it's going to break a lot easier than something that's like woven together.
It's like braiding. It's like braiding something versus just a straight line. I mean, when you basically weave something together, it's definitely stronger.
Okay, so then I see the exposed reel seat. We already talked about that. We talked about the foam handle on there. I noticed on that rod it's a lot smaller, so the bottom of my palm is actually touching the blank that is on it. We talked about the guides that are on that, and then also the look. Mm-hmm. So now I kind of understand that ad.
Yeah, it's definitely. Michael did get excited about that because he really likes those rods, but. Those are, but yeah, that's just a really, really super high-end graphite that we got our hands on, and super high-end guides. And what a lot of people don't realize is those guides are just outrageous high. And when you go into titanium, they get really expensive, and all the parts just add up, and that's why it's a $400 rod.
So who needs a $400 rod, Brian?
Well, probably nobody. But there are plenty of people out there that'll buy them. It's kind of neat to say, I don't know. It's kind of like having a 250. Do you really need a 250? I mean, I don't know.
I was just curious because, dude, there's rods out there that are $1,000.
Oh, it's crazy.
And there's reels that are $1,000.
We sell more $150 to $400 rods than we do $59 to $99 rods. But the tournament guys, we all like. I'm a tournament fisherman. I don't fish the level you do, but I'm a tournament fisherman. I like to say I've got the high dollar stuff. I've got to have the 12-inch Garmin. I've got to have the $400 Android rod. We just got to have it. I mean, if you're going to spend that kind of money, you might as well do it. You might as well do it and do it right.
I can't let Skip. You know why you don't fish at the level I do? Because you haven't paid the $1,800 entry fee and called in at the right day. Anybody can fish at the open level, Brian. You just chose to keep that entry fee in your pocket.
I took a whole vacation off, this whole week of vacation off, just to fish the TBF this weekend.
Is it? I'm not keeping you from being on the water, am I?
No. I'm good. Okay. Nope.
No, I was just saying. I'm working on using the Denali's to get to a level that is a fully qualified that you can't just pay your entry fee. But right now it's just an entry fee and a well-timed phone call, Brian.
I understand. It's got to be a real expensive game.
It is. Let's take a break. And when we come back, if you have any good warranty, because it did talk about that, I want to talk about the warranty game. Because I remember we used to always get into that with the hockey stick thing. We would have like a 30-day warranty on our hockey stick, and by day like 28, we were just like taking hard slap shots on everything.
Yeah, we could definitely get a few good ones.
Well, I want to get into that, and then I also want to get into rod care and rod maintenance. I mentioned a little bit for the cork. I want to talk about this is what you do for your living. I want you to talk about the best way to take care for your rod and make sure that those things last for years and years and years. This is BTL with Bryan Head. We'll be back after these messages.
Vibrating jigs are a great choice for any time of year, and the Kamikaze Swim-On is a perfect match for any vibrating jig. 2 sizes and the unique tail design gives it a bait fish profile and a great swimming action for realism. There are 17 colors. See them all at bigbitebaits.com. The Spro Little John crankbait has been around for almost 15 years, and it is one of my go-to crankbaits whenever I need a fish in the boat, so you can never have enough new colors. That's why Spro's coming out with a handful of new colors, including Pearl Shad, which has this bleached out white look, but it's got this pearlescent, really, really pretty. We've got Copper Shad, which looks amazing in the water. It's got that purple flake on the back, really, really pops in the water. And then if you want some real pop, we've got Sparkle Shad, nothing but sparkles all over this thing. And then last but not least, we've got the matte Sexy Shad, just a really different looking color for a crankbait. So you want to give them a little different look, that matte Sexy Shad is definitely the one to go with. All these colors are available in the original Little John and the MD.
Combining one of the most popular hook styles with Gamakatsu's beefier Superline offering, the Gamakatsu Superline Offset Round Bend delivers the strength necessary to target big fish in heavy cover. Well suited for braided line and heavier fluorocarbon, the Gamakatsu Superline Offset Round Bend is built using stronger Superline wire that allows anglers to easily fish a finesse worm around heavy cover. The round bend offers a larger bite area, perfect for any worm presentation, while increasing your hookup ratios. The newly enhanced Z-bend holds your plastics on the hook longer, reducing the number of pull-offs and reducing damage to plastics. Available in 2/0, 3/0, 4/0, and 5/0, this is the most durable worm hook, designed for heavier lines that hold your bait on longer.
Preparation is key to success. And that preparation starts well before you ever hit the water. You're only as strong as your connection to the fish, and your line is that critical connection. Confidence in your line every minute of every day on the water is a necessity, and failure, it's not an option. Sunline makes the fluorocarbon, nylon, and braided lines to give you the strength to guarantee your confidence.
Welcome back to BTL Bass Talk Live, talking all things rods with Denali Fishing's Bryan Head. I haven't asked any too dumb questions, have I? I mean, they've all been, I feel, fairly legitimate. You probably field them on a regular basis, Bryan.
Yeah, it's pretty regular, but the question is, I ain't gave any too dumb answers, I hope.
No, it's helped. It's been very educational for me, except, I always put the model number down, but I've never really, I mean, sometimes you get it like, if it's the Lithium Pro and it starts with LP, I mean, deductive reasoning would say, hey, that's a Lithium Pro. But then the
biggest thing people get confused about is power versus action. And that's the biggest thing. And then, like you said, the model numbers, they don't understand what they are. So hopefully that helped them out some.
It did. You got any good warranty issues? Any good warranty questions? Like, is it pretty obvious when you get a rod back that's been, like, slammed in a car door and not, quote, broke on a hook set?
Gosh, it's daily. We got a young girl up there that does our warranties for us, and people call in, and Matt, it's the craziest stuff you've ever seen in your life. I mean, I've never seen a rod broke from abuse. In all the years I've done this, nobody's ever broke one from abuse. I think I'm probably the only one. But,
it's just always, I was just fishing with it.
And that does happen occasionally, but usually if a rod breaks, it's within the first few times you use it, if it's a manufacturer defect. But it's we hear all about, gosh, I was casting, and I reared back with my 3/8 ounce spinnerbait, and I made a cast, and a 12-incher bit it, and I set the hook, and it snapped. Probably not, but could have. I'm not saying it didn't, but it probably didn't happen. Most of the rods are damaged though, but we hear it all. We've had people send in rods for warranty because we have a limited lifetime warranty. It's for the first 90 days. There's no charge. After that, there's a $30 charge, and that's just so we can recoup our shipping. Then after a year, it's half the price of the rod. And that's pretty standard in the industry. Mm-hmm. But we've had people send in rods. Man, I just bought this thing, and my first day fishing, it broke. Well, we hadn't manufactured that rod in 7 years. So you probably didn't just buy it, you know. But we do hear that. And what do? We take care of them, you know. We give them their half price rod back. But yeah, man, it's goofy. It's, you know, most of the rods are broke from abuse. Because rods are just like, I don't know how to put it in layman's terms, but, you know, with all the little modulus in the graphite, when you bang a rod off the deck of your boat, or when it sits there and rides on your boat, you know, on Lake Erie, and it's rubbing your lid latches, that's bruising the rod. And a lot of people don't realize it's actually bruising the rod. So when it breaks, that's probably where it's going to break.
Along those lines, then, rod maintenance. What are the things that you recommend to maximize the lifespan of a bass rod?
I do this quite frequently. We touched on the cork. We touched on the handles. I wash my rods down, you know, at least once or twice a year with soap and water. And I also wipe down the blanks of the rod. I just usually use water or something just to get all the dirt and the kind of the nasty off of it. The guides, I do the same thing. I rub them down, wipe them. I take a Q-tip and rub inside of the ceramic of the guide to see if it catches anything. If you rub a Q-tip in there and it pulls a little strand off that Q-tip, you've got a broken guide. You need to get
what causes a ceramic guide to break? Because I've had like maybe one or two of them, but I'm trying to figure out, is it because I think it was because I reeled down to the bait and was like jamming it into the rock to try to get it out.
That definitely does happen a lot. You know, you really bait in and you know, I'm guilty too. I punch the rod down in the rocks. Yes, that can be part of it. You know, and I tell you what damages a lot of rod guides is the tubes inside your rod locker.
Really?
Yeah, that is really difficult on guides. It's the greatest invention ever, in my opinion, for carrying rods, because I sure like it. I sure like to just be able to grab my rod, and I think it's neat. But it does damage a lot of guides. The tip, not so much. But if you'll look, you know, a lot of times your guides will be laying down or bent. And a lot of times it's because, you know, when you put them in there, you hit it. You don't even pay attention. I don't. And I've done it too. I mean, we've all done it. But they're really hard on guides, the rod tubes. So
then you would recommend if you're going to use the rod tubes to use a rod sleeve?
For sure. And we actually have those too. But yeah, for sure. But you'll see a lot of guys, you've probably seen it, you know, out there on tour when you're out there. A lot of guys don't even have those tubes in their boats. They just leave it open.
Yeah, just take it out, and they just have the rods in the rod box. But that's so they can take like 75 rods with them.
True.
Brian, I only carry like 8 rods.
I've seen some of the boat manufacturers advertising now that they're just putting shelves in there rather than actual tubes. They're just putting shelves in there, and you stick your rods on a shelf, and they got shelves in them.
Mm-hmm. What else is there that I haven't covered as far as the rod game is concerned?
You know, really, I think you pretty much covered it all. You know, we've kind of went through all the spectrums of building a rod and, you know, how to use a rod and the weights of the rod and things. But, you know, one thing everybody's got to remember too is I say this when I'm at shows and stuff, and you see people and you talk to them, you know, and this goes back to the breakage and warranty rods. You know, when you pull back on a rod, as you well know, there comes a point where it stops bending. And that's when you've maximized the graphite, you've maximized your line, you've maximized everything. And when you keep pulling, eventually you break it. But, you know, people need to understand that all of these fishing rods, and I don't care what brand it is and how high dollar it is and how low dollar it is, there comes a point where you maximize the ability of that rod before you break it. And that's something that people don't go over. You know, there's a lot of little different things. I mean, there's different types of reel seats. A lot of people, you know, we went over this a little bit. This is an actual true on the blank reel seat. There's a lot of reel seats that say they've got a through blank on them. They actually don't have a through blank. This is called a skeleton seat. This is just a couple little details I want to go over that I forgot. This is called a skeleton reel seat. It's actually two pieces. You got one piece here, you got one piece here, and your reel mounts in between them, and your hand is definitely on the blank. You take this reel seat here, which is very popular, very common, and I don't have another casting one, but this is a sleeve, and your blank actually is in the sleeve. So you're not actually theoretically on the blank. but the blank inside there is touching the sleeve, if that makes any sense.
Yeah.
So there's a difference in a lot of the reel seats. A lot of the reel seats you see, the blank goes through there. Doesn't affect anything. Some of those are just as good as any of the others, but that's a difference between a through blank and a non-through blank.
Okay.
And I don't want to get too far offline because my mind will start wandering and I start thinking about things and I'll have people so confused it ain't even funny, Matt.
No, that's the beauty of this show. I don't know. I mean, I know you've got a BTL hat on, so you've obviously listened to a show or two.
Hey, I do have my BTL hat on.
I go way down that. Way down that rabbit hole sometimes. But that's what I like. I mean, dude. It's not too often you get to just ask a guy who knows everything there is about rods every question that you've had about it. So I take full advantage of it.
But yeah, I mean, it's the rod business it's a lot of fun, and it's the biggest problem in the rod business is, like you said, and you kind of laughed about it, is the warranty. It just blows me away, and you just never know what they're going to say. You just never know.
Yeah. Hey, I want to ask you a couple more questions that are just I'm going to hit you with them that you're not expecting. All right. I know this happens. To everybody. You can admit it or not. You break off 2 inches of your favorite rod. You say, screw it. I'll just put another tip on there. Does that completely change the action of the rod? You talked about, you called it a spindle that you had that's for that whole rod. What about those rods that it's not like enough to ruin the rod, but it's that little 2 to 3 inches? How much of an impact does that have on the overall performance of the rod?
Completely changes the dynamic of the rod. You may turn a medium heavy rod into a heavy. That 2 inches. That 2 inches will change the whole bend of the rod, the whole taper of the rod. Can it be done? Absolutely. We do it. I do it myself. You've done it. I've done it. We've all done it. But yes, it does change the dynamic of the rod 100%.
How much does it impact the breaking strength of the rod when you're snagged and you see everybody? You don't see everybody. This is more so boat flipping with me. A couple people have pointed out, man, when you boat flip, you grab the rod really high, and the tip does it, but also the snags where they're grab the rod and now you're pulling half of the rod instead of the entire blank. How does that impact the rod?
I always tell people, and I've told, you've heard me say it, I'm sure, and Michael's heard me say it. And I know you guys do it. I do it. We boat flip fish. The best way to put it is you're going to break one because they're not dip nets. And if you keep the rod in the bend, that parabolic bend that it needs, and we've got charts that show it. If you keep the rod in that bend, you're not going to hurt anything because it ain't different than pulling on it. But the higher you get it, once you start bringing that rod up, you're going to high stick the rod. The weakest point of a rod is when it's straight up in the air. But so when you boat flip fish, once you get them over the gunnel, if you let the pressure off, you're probably never going to break the rod. But if you pick the fish up where you can't touch the carpet, if you get that rod up high enough in there, you're going to break some rods. And I don't care what brand it is. They can advertise whatever they want. You're going to break the rod.
Interesting. Let's say I have treated my rod roughly and I need to replace an eye. What tools do I need and how long should that take me?
If you need to replace a tip if you're just going to replace the tip, that's nothing more than basically a lighter, a little stick of glue, and then a tip. You heat the old tip up, take your needle nose, you pull it off. We have little bitty strips of glue. When we send it out, we got little pieces of glue you shove up inside of the tube of the tip, which I don't have a tip in front of me. You heat the tube up and you stick it back on there and straight line it up. It's that simple.
Easy.
If you can use super glue, but you're not going to get it off after that. If you need to replace like a guide like this or a single foot guide, those require a little bit more work. You got to scrape off all the old wrapping and things. And then you got to line the guide up and then you actually wrap it with thread and then coat it with epoxy. And we do that for our rods. People send their rods into us. We'll repair them and then just charge the shipping back. Okay. But that's a process that takes 24 hours because that stuff has to sit and spin and dry overnight. But most of your local rod shops will repair a guide for you. It's $6, $7, $8.
All right. Anything else here? How many rods do you think the weekend guy, like, what's a good number of rods? Like, if I was going to start out and say, you know what, I'm going to completely retool my arsenal of rods. This is a personalized question, but you're in the rod game. I'm just curious as to what you think on it.
You'd be shocked at the amount of rods that people buy from us. This is my personal opinion, and from my fishing experience, I carry 2 spinning rods, which I know you carry a way more than that, but I carry 2 spinning rods. And I carry usually a couple of 7-foot medium heavy, so I can kind of do everything, a chatterbait and everything with them. I carry a total in my boat of 18. I carry something to throw spinner baits and top waters on. I carry something to throw jigs on. I usually carry 2 or 3 jig rods. I carry something to, believe it or not, throw a Carolina rig on, something to flip and pitch with. And then you've always just got 2 or 3 of those multi-purpose rods that you got to have in your boat.
Okay. That's just a personalized thing. I rarely carry more than a dozen. I'll have anywhere from 2 to 5 spinning rods. I always have a 7-4 medium heavy with 18-pound test on it. You can literally do anything with that.
Sure.
I won't ever tie anything on, and then a couple crankbait rods, a couple of that. But I'm more the utility rod guys. You see my order. I'm a big 7-4 medium heavy and 7-4 heavy on the Lithium Pros, and then the 7-2 coverts. I really like that in both the medium heavy and the heavy.
Right.
And then those 7-4. Are they still calling them the multi-spin, or what is that called now
Yes.
in the Lithium Pros? The 7-4 multi-spin.
Yeah.
Did Jeff design that rod?
He did. He actually designed it to throw a bunch of tubes and stuff up north when they went up north. But yeah, he worked on that rod a bunch. That has became a pretty big deal for us. That's become a big deal. It's kind of become, with a lot of stuff you do, it's become a hybrid drop shot rod. It's kind of become a, as you call it, your dink and dunk rod. I mean, we're actually sold out of them.
Really?
Yeah,
for the
we actually
foreseeable
sold.
future? Or that was the other thing I wanted to go through. Like, how has the rod business been through this whole goods shortage over the past year? Has it been just a nightmare trying to get stuff to dealers?
It's been difficult, but for us, we've been fairly lucky. We had our orders out there. We order 12 to 18 months in advance. So we pretty much knew we had stuff coming. Right now, we're in really good shape, except for the Lithium Pros, which they took off way faster than we actually thought. We just didn't forecast properly for them. But other than that, we've stayed in really good shape on our rods, and we've been fortunate. But there has been some that's had some extreme problems.
Do you know when you'll be good to go with the Lithium Pros back in stock there?
Yes, it's supposed to be the second week of May, I believe. I'm not in front of my computer, but I think it's the second week of May.
Yeah, that's not that far off. And then last question, what's the crappie tank rods? I know I've talked about them on the show. We had Scott Palmer on, and Soak Up. I'm a big fan of that 12-foot heavy for the forward-facing sonar, crappie fishing, dipping it in brush piles along trees and all that. Are those available now?
Yes, we do have those available, and they've done actually fairly well. But yes, they are available. And there's, like I said, there's the 3 jigging rods, and I think there is 4 or 5 spinning rods. But yes, they're available.
Okay. I know we're giving away a 7-4 rod for the winner, that multi-spin spinning rod for the winner of the BPT Fantasy Fishing and the Bassmaster Elite Series Fantasy Fishing. And that is the rod that I'm a big fan of, that like I said, I do all of my stuff with it. I also do have a couple 30% off cards. So if you are watching or listening to this and you are one of the first 3 people to DM me, I will send you a picture of a one-time 30% off Denali rod. Can I do this? Is this okay, Brian?
Yes, you can. Sure.
Okay. Sorry, I should have asked that before we actually did it.
It's all good. It's all good.
But if you're one of the first 3 people after you watch the show to ask me for the Denali rod discount, I'll shoot you a one-time use discount that you can use at denalirods.com for the Denali rod of your choice. All the way from a Riker series all the way up to the Android. Is that the
correct?
Okay.
Yep. Now they can buy anything that's on our website.
Well, there you go. I greatly appreciate it. Thank you for taking the time. Like I said, I know we're recording this. I'm actually in Mississippi right now. Hopefully improperly boat flipping. 4 to 6 pounders putting excessive strain on the Denali rod.
Dude, we're all guilty of that, are we not? I used to laugh at them. That's what I always tell them. Hey, that's not a dip net. Come on, But it's all good. It's all good.
But yeah, hey, I did boat flip on that. Using that N3, I did boat flip that 7.5 pounder in Florida, and I was like by far the biggest fish I'd ever boat flip. But I'd also never used a 7.8 extra heavy before. So
that's a beast, isn't it?
I was shocked at how it snatched that thing. I was like, okay, now I know what like Randall Tharp. Like, okay, now I'm not as impressed with their boat flipping the 6s. So I was like, this thing's pretty stiff.
Yeah, it's pretty wild, but we all do it. We all do it, and heck, man, when you get a big one on that, the excitement takes over. You don't even think about it. You just do it.
Heck yeah. Well, thank you very much, Bryan. And I greatly appreciate the support of BTL, of my quest in the Bassmaster Opens as well. And thank you for representing Denali Rods. And
thanks for having me, man, and hope we didn't confuse anybody.
If you did, just shoot me a message. I'll get it with Bryan. If you have any questions like that, we'll get it taken care of, and we'll make sure you get the rod that you want.
Sounds good.
If I'm not confused, I don't think other people are confused.
There you go.
This has been another informative edition. Try to throw one of these in at least once a month. An informative edition of BTL. We'll talk to you guys later.